Was
Yes.
that on the participants list?
Yes. Jack is a recent member.
Oh,
Um,
wonderful. Welcome, Jack. Okay.
he's had IT issues the past couple of meetings.
Okay, fantastic. Well, we are at 7 on the dot, so let's go ahead and get started then. Welcome, commission members, liaisons, members of the public. My name is Marissa Hartzler. I am the new vice chair for the commission. And our new chair, Brian Hawking, he sends his regret. He had prior commitments and so cannot be here tonight. So we are going to carry on. I'm happy that we have so many wonderful members and our staffer Hannah to rely on. I'm sure we will stumble a little bit, but onward. First off, I just want to say I hope everyone had a healthy and happy holiday season and that your 2024 is off to a wonderful start. So with that, we do have an ambitious agenda as always. So we'll go ahead and get started. Again, we have this new Zoom link. So I'd like to just request members of the commission, go ahead and keep your cameras on when possible to help facilitate discussion. I think that members of the public are maybe muted right now. They might have cameras turned off, except for during the public comment period. So thanks for your assistance there. Hannah, I believe that we had 3 excused absences for this meeting. Brian, Suzanne Walensky, and Landon Balcom. Do you know of any other commission member absences
I
for the
believe
minutes?
that's it. Carl said he wasn't going to be able to attend, but in terms of members, I think that's it.
Fantastic, wonderful, yes. And thanks for noting that Carl Rist is not going to be able to attend tonight. He was officially appointed by the mayor to serve as our liaison to city council. So we're definitely sorry to have his first meeting be a conflict with the city council meeting, which was rescheduled for tonight. But I know we all look forward to seeing him at future meetings. Hannah, do you have any other updates regarding new members and openings while we're talking attendance?
Yeah, so we have one vacancy, which is actually Dennis's role. So it'll really be in at the end of this month, but we are accepting applications until I think it was the 27th of this month. We haven't received any applicants yet, but hopefully we'll get some coming through, and then we'll be back at full members.
Is
And
Dennis a
then
county appointee?
city,
Okay, thanks.
city appointee.
And Hannah, what descriptor, if that makes
It's
sense?
transportation planning policy, right, Dennis?
Yep, that's right. I wouldn't let that limit anyone from applying or reaching out to people that don't have that background. But yeah, that's what it's called.
Excellent. Yes, please do reach out, friends and colleagues and neighbors. Absolutely. Wonderful. Thanks for that update, Hannah. Okay. Well, I will go ahead then and share my screen. Could I ask for a volunteer, please, to go ahead and there we go. Read our equity and land acknowledgement statement.
Marissa, I'd be happy to.
Awesome. Thank you, Andres.
Yeah, of course. Let me just blow it up on my screen a bit. Okay. We, as the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission, want to begin this meeting by affirming BPAC's commitment to equity and racial justice. We would like to acknowledge that this meeting is being held on lands that have served as the home for diverse Indigenous communities long before current governments were established here. We pay our respect to the elders and members of these communities, both past and present, and recognize the harms of genocide and colonialism. We will make a conscious effort to reflect on the following questions as we advance through our business and contemplate changes in our community. And we recognize that achieving equity requires our commitment to an ongoing process? How can we seek to repair harm with our work and not erase history? How does our work impact the vulnerability and safety of people who hold many intersecting marginalized identities, including Black, Indigenous, and people of color, people with disabilities, and lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and questioning people? How can we prioritize and center people in our decision-making? How can we be more responsive to local needs? How can our work build community power and shared decision-making?
So let's actually, I will go ahead and I guess share my screen again. And there we go. Fantastic. So are there any additions or revisions to tonight's agenda? Otherwise, if there aren't any, looking for a motion to accept the agenda.
A motion to accept the agenda.
Second.
That was a motion by Nathan and sorry, a second by
Ideal.
Ideal. Awesome. Thank you. Okay. We'll call the question. If all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All right. Any opposed? All right. The agenda is adopted. Thanks so much for that. All right. And so now, let's see, we've got the approval from the minutes from the December meeting. So I believe those were shared out as an attachment to Hannah's recent email. I did want to mention one edit that I had to the minutes. I put Heidi Carter in the wrong spot, so I moved her up to present. So I'd like to recommend making that change. But were there any other revisions to the minutes? Otherwise, if not, we're looking for a motion to adopt the minutes.
Motion to adopt the minutes.
Okay.
Mike Shepherd, I'll second.
All right. That was Andres and Mike Shepherd. Awesome. All right. So calling the question, all those in favor of approving the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Wonderful. All right. We have adopted the minutes. Thank you all. All right. We will now move into the public comment period of today's meeting. So I have to admit, not quite sure. Might have to lean on you, Hannah, for the ability here to have our members of the public. I see quite a few on the call. I guess they can probably type in the chat if they're interested in speaking. Oh, I see a hand raised.
I see a hand too. Also, I would like to note this is a new Zoom link and a new Zoom profile, so it might be a little bumpy tonight. So hopefully there's no issues with it, but it looks like people are able to raise their hands. And so I'm going to says Volker Blum says difficult to comment in the chat.
It looks like you might be able to raise your hand, and then if you'd like to address the commission, we could ask you to unmute.
Okay, I'll unmute Volker. They said that
it worked. Can you hear me?
yes.
Let's see. Oh, camera doesn't work, but I hope that's okay. Sorry to have the camera off. Thanks. I haven't been here in a while. I'm still interested in bike infrastructure, as some on the commission know. I guess that the last 2 years were not the nicest. I wanted to thank, I guess, BPAC. I don't know who instigated the restriping website that is on the agenda today. That's helpful. I think we lost at least 2 major opportunities in Durham, and I still don't understand how that happened in areas that I know that would have needed bike lanes and restriping. One of them was Urban Road, which I think most people are aware, and which was implemented in a way that is, at least for the majority commute that I see, it's not particularly great. And the other is Hillsborough Road, where I wasn't actually even aware that the restriping was going on, unfortunately, although I knew it ahead of time and I had asked, and Hillsborough Road was restriped, I think, without any facilities. And yeah, I think that kind of demonstrates the commitment that is in fact there when it comes to bike facilities in Durham, when it matters. And that's something that's hard to see. We've made progress in other areas. The real comment is I'm interested in the at least 3 projects that were approved years ago and even federally funded on the Hillendale multi-use trail, LaSalle Street, Marine. All of them connect to Duke, of course, right? And all of them would have been useful for bike commuters. And I know that Durham has a complicated history with Duke, which is a problem. For instance, in the Urban Road case, the stakeholder that the city actually talked to was Duke University, but it didn't talk to the public. The transportation department held the public meeting 2 weeks before implementation, as you'll remember. But then the people who would actually commute, I think, are largely not the high-income people at Duke. At least that's my impression, right? The areas where these things connect, or if Hillendale, for instance, connected over I-85, which I've asked for over 10 years now with a multi-use trail, would be the lower-income people there. I think the people who actually ride bikes. And so I'd like to ask BPAC to find out what is the status of these projects. The status officially is constant. If you look at the city's website, for instance, Hillendale multi-use is very optimistic. Right? It says anticipated right-of-way completion December 2023. Anticipated bid advertisement February 2024. And if that was so, that would be great, because it says anticipated construction start June 2024. But I've been asking multiple city councils and also BPAC since at least 2020, what is the status of the projects? And the schedule has just been moved continually backwards. In the case of LaSalle Street, which would have been truly helpful, I think, not for me personally, but it connects to a lot of apartment complexes, I think. There's not even a date anymore. It just says anticipated right of design completed July 2021, anticipated right of way completion to be determined. And so one can always argue that one reprioritizes, but if we can afford to have completely designed projects that are simply not built, that's really terrible for Durham. These are done, right? They're not even, they would have been done in terms of the hard work, in terms of the design, and we don't do them. And so I'd like to ask BPAC to look into that somehow to find out what is the status. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much for that comment. I don't know, can I invite anybody if there's a commission member response? Or Hannah, if you know any status update? Otherwise, certainly something we can look into.
Volker, if you would put your email in the chat and we can follow up with you.
I also write to City Council about every half a year, and I haven't received a response recently. The last person to respond was the person who actually cared. That was Steve Schul, I think. And he wrote a very nice comment, but of course he also had, I think, done his share of Durham city politics.
And I think I just want to check. Dennis, you have your hands raised. You want to comment on this topic?
I didn't want to comment. I had a public comment.
Gotcha, understood. Dennis,
Yeah, I'll just
on this
comment. I just
subject?
wanted, yeah, I just want to say hi to Volker, first of all. Thanks. Good to hear from you again. It's been a while. Yeah, first of all, yeah, this website is interesting. I really appreciate the work that's gone into sort of trying to organize these sort of resurfacings. It's something we've talked about for the last couple of years that I've been on about how we can better organize this. So anyway, I just want to say thanks for bringing that up. I agree, sort of getting some consistent understanding of what the status is of these projects and how they're changing over time. That's like step number one, and then actually intervening to actually implement the projects that maybe are a lower priority than we think they should be. So I don't have a solution, but I want to thank you for bringing it up, and then maybe encourage you to bring it up again when Carl's here, maybe next month too. He's new on city council and will be a new liaison, so it might be good to kind of keep his ear on this problem as well. I'm sure he'll read our minutes, but yeah, we'll bring it up to him next month, hopefully. So thanks, Volker.
Thank you so much, Dennis. Okay. Ideal?
Yeah, mine was really simple and it's similar just in terms of a multi-use path trail. Two of them, the Kelly Bryant Bridge Trail and the Third Fort Creek Trail, which would have gone similarly through many low-income communities and helped with being transit connected in a multimodal way in those areas. I know the websites have been updated to say that construction, that little squiggly line in front that's like estimate and then January 2025. It was my understanding that they were supposed to begin a little earlier than that, and I didn't know if there was a reason given for the pushback or anything like that. And I just hadn't heard much of an update about those trail projects after them it looking like they were going to get going with like final design over a year ago.
Interesting. Theme here of learning more about status updates and where we can find this information. And yeah, wonderful. Anybody know an update on that or another one for us to look into? Any other public comments? Don't see any additional hands raised or comments at this time. All right. Well, if not, thank you. Thank you everyone for your comments this evening. Thanks for attending and participating. And we will then go ahead and move on to our speakers tonight. We have an exciting set of speakers. We have Lauren Grove, who is Durham's new Vision Zero coordinator. And we also have Shane McCarthy, who's a traffic and safety engineer for the city of Raleigh. And Lauren, we're putting you a little bit on the spot tonight. Is Lauren on? There she is. We're putting you a little bit on the spot tonight. I didn't get to work with you and your new role. If we could ask you to just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about your role, we'd love to get to know you, and then we can transition over to hear more from Shane on what the city of Raleigh is implementing. So with that, I can turn it over to Lauren. We may have to figure out how to, if she's not a co-host.
I thought I had, let me make you a co-host real fast.
He's a co-host now.
Thank you.
Okay.
Great. Yeah, I do have some slides, if that's all right. To
Definitely.
pull up.
Have the share screen.
Yeah.
Awesome. Go for it.
Okay. Everybody see that okay? Yeah, get a thumbs up. So, hi everybody. My name is Lauren Grove. I am the newly hired Vision Zero coordinator. And I just want to take a moment to thank the folks here beyond BPAC, but specifically here in our advocacy groups for advocating for this position. I acknowledge that the voices from the community were a reason why this position was approved most recently. I know there's been advocacy for a while, and so I just want to acknowledge that effort And that was part of the reason why I decided to come to Durham, knowing there's a strong advocacy for Vision Zero. I've spent the last 4 weeks since I started just getting to know my colleagues in the transportation department. I've had one-on-one meetings with about 22 folks so far. I've also talked to some folks in Raleigh, hi Shane, and also Charlotte to get to know their Vision Zero efforts and program. And I'm excited to talk about what I've heard, but I want to sort of set the groundwork, the framework for what I believe is necessary for a successful Vision Zero policy. And I'm going to do that by talking a bit about my background. So I studied neuroscience and did about 5 years of mental health research that really focused on neuroscience, but broadly mental health conditions. So my belief in Vision Zero actually stems from my education and experience in neuroscience, and also working at the city of Houston, where I implemented Vision Zero and developed their action plan. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how those are related. So on the right is a single neuron in the brain. On the left is a photo of the street network of Durham circa 1924. And beyond looking similar, sort of with this core at the center and these connections stemming outward, there are a lot of ways that our built environment influences brain activity, right? So this single neuron is stimulated by outside context. That's to say, our built environment influences our choices, our behavior, and our overall health outcomes. I learned this through working with women in Detroit who had health conditions that put them at risk for delivering preterm. Most of the women identified as Black, they were low income, lower levels of education, and low or no vehicle households. And this is a public health issue that continues in Detroit to this day. There are about 43 per 100,000 deaths of Black women, compared to 0 when you look at white women in Detroit. So it is a public health issue, and I didn't quite see the connection to limited access to resources until I was doing this research, and I started to see this bigger picture. Why is it that this population is experiencing limited access to resources and poor health outcomes? This was not their choosing. This was a symptom of the built environment and a symptom of policy decisions that were made along the way. And that's when I went into urban planning to really study root causes of policy, built environment, and how we can improve access for those folks that need it most. I think one way that we're seeing some policy decisions when we look at transportation safety is reflected in the number of fatalities by year in the US. Now, this is a 13-year snapshot that also looks at the rise in pedestrian deaths, but we can look back a century and see this trend continue to go up and in the wrong direction. And the approaches that we've used to date have not integrated a public health framework, which is necessary to prevent injury and really focus on the most vulnerable road users. We've done a lot of the same in terms of our policy, our built environment, prioritized one mode over the other. So we sit there and wonder why fatalities are not going down. We need a new approach to traffic safety, and that is my firm belief that fatalities are a public health crisis requiring a public health framework. So fortunately, in the last couple of months, there's been a lot of great movement towards a public health approach and Vision Zero, safe systems, transportation safety. This pyramid that I'm showing here is a safe systems pyramid that was recently published by David Ederer. He is a public health engineer for the CDC. The pyramid is based on the science of injury, injury prevention, control, and risk management. All of those factors are deeply entrenched in public health practice. Yet, we don't quite see this in transportation practice. We talk about the health outcomes of transportation, right? But we haven't taken a public health framework to transportation. And the Safe Systems Pyramid is a way for us to do that. So in this pyramid, we emphasize traffic safety as a public health problem. And we recognize that the agent responsible for injuries is the release of energy. And to target the agent, you invest in injury prevention by decreasing the release of energy. So in traffic safety, that release of energy happens in a crash. And depending on a number of factors, that release can result in catastrophe or minor injuries. The human body can only sustain so much. Many European countries root their Vision Zero approach in the biomechanics of the human body, and they have seen decreases in traffic fatalities over the years. To focus on injury prevention, the pyramid prioritizes population level interventions that require less individual effort. So as indicated by number 1, it's called socioeconomic factors. In transportation safety, we might call this urban planning or urban design. It's really policy standards. Things like locating transit near affordable housing, street design standards that are based on context, so on and so forth. So policies that impact everybody at a population scale. In theory, those policies reduce energy from a crash because they remove a lot of the exposure and the risk. So if I am locating transit near affordable housing, I only have a short walk to catch my bus. I have less exposure to conflicts like other drivers. So as you go up from the pyramid, you decrease the population level impact and you increase the individual effort that's required for an intervention to be effective. So latent safety measures are things like automatic braking systems in cars. While effective, they're not operating at population level impact because not every car has an automatic braking system. Active measures like stop signs require that drivers every time adhere to the stop sign in order to have an effect. And then we get to education and campaigns like encouraging drivers to slow down, really get away from that population level impact because it depends on long-term behavior change. We would need every driver, every time they drive, to go slow. So we really want to base our Vision Zero approach on those 1 and 2, the policy, the socioeconomic factors, and the built environment. That's where we're going to get population level impact, really focus on a public health framework and ensure that our built environments are safe and accessible for everybody, but especially those that are more vulnerable to injury. There's even better news about this. So just last week, FHWA posted a very similar framework to support this pyramid, to support a public health approach to safe systems. This is really, really good news in many ways. So you may be familiar with this wheel on the left that talks about safe systems, including safe road users, safe vehicles, safe roads, right? It's pitting all of these things equally. And it's also saying that the responsibility is shared. And we know that's not true. From a public health framework, the responsibility is on decreasing the energy transfer in a crash, right? So we know bigger vehicles going faster are going to release a ton of energy. And so we really want to focus there. There is higher responsibility there. So now with the safe systems roadway design hierarchy that just came out, I haven't combed through the whole document, but definitely headed in a direction that creates tiers of priority, including removing severe conflicts as the #1 tier. So those tiers 1 through 3 are really going to be focused on injury prevention. And then that 4th tier would be more like the education framework that's added on top of that. And I pulled out this quote from this guideline on the roadway design hierarchy that I think encapsulates a huge step forward at the federal level, supports a public health approach, which is that physical changes, physical changes. I am having trouble seeing my full slide here, but you can see the quote there, and it really just emphasizes how we want to step away from relying on every individual to be safe. That's not worked. And we really want to move towards things that focus on our built environment. So that said, that's where I personally am coming from when you hear me speak about Vision Zero. When I am talking about our future efforts, I'm really going to base the strategy on the policy and design changes, or what we're already doing towards design. I'm really going to base the strategy there. So I mentioned I've been talking to some folks at the transportation department and other cities, and I want to acknowledge and congratulate all of the staff, everybody in the community who's been advocating for Safe Streets efforts, because from my perspective, being here 4 weeks, coming from the city of Houston where I've done this work, there is a lot that's already happening here. And that is amazing. I'm really excited by this. And I just have a few pieces of what I've seen pulled out. This is not reflective of everything that the city is working on, that the region's working on towards Vision Zero, but it is something that's really significant and helpful when we're developing a Vision Zero strategy. So we have things that are based in policy. We have plans and opportunities to update plans. We have major coordination happening where it needs to happen. And we have some projects and programs already in place. Maybe they need tweaking, but they're there. So I just want to acknowledge all of that. And I want to recognize 2 needs, and then I'll wrap it up. One need I heard from folks is a need to benchmark all of that work. So we need to do a better job documenting, sharing out that information. How many projects have we completed in the last 5 years that align with Safe Streets? How much money have we spent on those projects? What type of project? Where? That's a huge piece of this, because that's going to set the stage for an action plan that's really rooted in what we can do. Excuse me. And then the other thing I heard is to convene. So over the next couple of months, I'm going to be really focusing on these 2 pieces: convening folks, learning, and benchmarking, getting all of the documentation together, looking at crash data, so we can have a really solid baseline going forward that is well informed, and that brings people with us in developing a really tangible, measurable, transformative Vision Zero policy. So that's all that I have. I will be back at later months. Most likely, I will likely be reaching out to many of you on this committee just to learn more, but please feel free to reach out to me. We can have a one-on-one and I can pick your brain. And I look forward to working with everybody here. Thank you so much.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Lauren. I know we all look forward to working with you, and thanks for pulling that together. That was really awesome. 4th week on the job. Love it. You're diving in. We'll go ahead and we'll save, if it's okay with everyone, save the opportunity for questions maybe until the end. That way we can move to Shane McCarthy's presentation and come back with questions for both of our speakers. So I think Shane had tested and he is a co-host. And
all right, I guess okay if I go ahead and share my slides.
absolutely.
Okay. Here we go. Can you see it? Is that working? All right. Well, yeah, thanks everybody. Great to see that you guys have an awesome new teammate, and looking forward to seeing what kind of progress you'll come up with. So I'm Shane McCarthy with the City of Raleigh. James Sedano is my boss, so he's also here in attendance. We were asked to just take a few minutes to tell you guys about what Raleigh has been doing in terms of our Vision Zero program, some projects that we have recently completed, and also about working with NCDOT and getting into their pot of funding. So I hope we have some helpful advice for you, and looking forward to sharing, and hopefully got some good questions for me at the end. So let's get into it. So we're going to talk about a little bit of background on Vision Zero, a little bit about what our Raleigh Vision Zero program does, a couple of case studies for some projects, and also just some advice about working with DOT and getting their funding. So that's our overview for the day. Just a real basic, obviously Lauren did a great job explaining a lot about Vision Zero, but just a really basic thing about Vision Zero is it's a goal to eliminate serious injuries and fatalities on the transportation network. And we do that by increasing safe, healthy, and equitable mobility for all. And Vision Zero obviously is a very ambitious target. It's one that's going to be difficult to achieve. It's going to require a lot of transformational changes to the transportation system. So why did we pick zero as the goal? Anyone? What's an acceptable level of what's an acceptable number of people to die on the roadways?
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you're setting a goal for traffic safety, it's tough to say that there's an acceptable number that's not zero. So that's really fundamentally where it comes from. And we have seen that although it can seem distant, it is possible in places that have pulled it off. So that's what we're aiming for. So there's a lot of things that are going to have to work on to get to zero. There's infrastructure, which is what James and I at the city have the most influence over. There's also education about dangerous driving behaviors. There's laws and policies that are going to have to get changed to allow us to do things like speed cameras, for example, and other technologies. Enforcement's a big piece of the picture. We see that visible enforcement is a big deterrent to dangerous driving. And then there's vehicles, they're getting heavier and larger, making sight lines worse. And that's really negatively affecting pedestrians and cyclists when there's collisions. So there's a lot of stuff going on to get to Vision Zero. What we're going to talk about today is infrastructure, because that's what we have the ability to immediately work on and get projects done on the short term. We're also, of course, we have to address those other pieces of the puzzle in the long term too. So a really quick overview of our team. We have 5 team members, me, James, and 3 others. We have a lot of close relationships with all of our other city departments because Vision Zero is very interdisciplinary. We can't really get anything done by ourselves, so we have to lean on our partners for help. So that's going to be the signal shop, the sign and pavement markings crews, development services to make sure new developments have correct safety standards, and the police department, and probably plenty of others too. Of course, we also have to have good relationships with the Department of Transportation. The FHWA is a good source of grant funding, so we work with them as well. And then, of course, we work closely with schools and community groups across the city to address safety concerns. So some things we do on a typical day is try to get roadway safety improvements implemented. That's the main thing that we feel like we can have the most impact with. So that's where we put the highest priority. We also are responsible for crash data for the city. So we're tracking all the fatalities and we're assessing where there's dangerous locations based on crash data. We're handling citizen requests. So if there's an issue in someone's neighborhood or on their commute, they can reach out to us and we'll go take a look, see if there's any improvements that can be made. And we manage the school zones and school areas for the city as well as the streetlights. So typical infrastructure projects are things like traffic signals installations. That's a pretty common fix for a lot of crash hotspots. We've been putting in quite a few new signals, especially around schools lately. We'll upgrade existing signals to get better signal heads. We'll do pedestrian crossing upgrades like, for example, pedestrian signals or better signage at crosswalks. Signs and markings help you delineate curves and things like that. So we do a lot of those. And then, of course, guardrail to prevent you from running into hazards. All right, so that's the background information. Kind of, you know, a little bit of an overview. So I hope this is interesting. We're going to talk about a couple of case studies of projects that we've done in Raleigh. And I feel like that has a lot of value to kind of see what went well and what lessons we've learned from these couple of projects. So this is a crosswalk on Wilmington Street downtown. This is a major thoroughfare for pedestrians going from the Go Raleigh transit station into downtown. So it's very busy, one of the busiest crosswalks that we have in the city. We've had a few crashes there, including one in the middle of 2023, and it needed some upgrades. So one thing you can see by looking at this picture is check out that giant grease truck. You see that? So it's
in a bike lane.
Yeah, it's blocking it's in the bike lane partially, and it's also blocking the sight distance for drivers to see pedestrians approaching the crosswalk. So that could lead to the two users not seeing each other and there could be a collision. So here's what we did. We put in concrete bump outs. This is a slightly different perspective, but you see the concrete bump outs there. And what that's doing is preventing vehicles from parking near the crosswalk. So now there's not going to be anything blocking sight distance. You'll be able to see as people approach if you're a driver, and if you're walking to cross the street, you're going to be able to see the cars coming, so you know when you need to be cautious. There was actually already no parking signs there, but a lot of drivers, you know, they're going to do what they do, and if they have the drop off or delivery in a truck, a lot of times they're going to park in the no parking zone and just kind of risk getting a ticket. So putting something physically there to stop them is much more effective. We also put in these rectangular rapid flashing beacons, or RFBs, and those are the lights that come on when you press the button on these pedestrian signs. So they flash to drivers to alert them that there's pedestrian crossing. So what we found when we installed these is they looked really nice. The RFBs did, but they weren't getting a lot of use. People weren't really pressing the button. We went out there and observed, and some people were complaining that they would have to walk through the puddle to go press the button. It's kind of out of the way. By the time you get there, you're kind of close to being out in the street anyway. And just due to the huge amount of people walking through here, the vast majority weren't actually pressing the button to activate the warning lights. We ended up having to move those a little closer so they're more accessible. So that was a lesson learned there. We kind of we could have picked a better location where the buttons were a little more accessible for everyone to be able to push them. And even still, I think the vast majority of people aren't going to use that. So that's just kind of a complication that comes with this RFB system. So I guess I'll move on to the case study number 2. So this is about protected left turns at a lot of locations throughout the city. This is a common situation. So imagine you're sitting here waiting to turn left, and you have to judge the gap in traffic there. How does that make you feel? Do you feel pretty confident about that, or does that make you a little nervous?
I hate it.
Yeah, me too. Um, so this leads to a type of crash pattern that we see a lot called a left turn, same roadway crash. So when people are turning in front of oncoming traffic, they're trying to find a gap in traffic. And unfortunately, humans are not really great at that. If there's multiple lanes of traffic coming at high speeds, finding that gap is just something where people are going to make mistakes. So we've seen that this type of crash is usually pretty severe compared to other crashes. So for example, it's 9% of the injury crashes, but only about 3% of total crashes in Raleigh. So that's like 3 times more severe than the typical crash. So it's something we want to target directly. So we're kind of on a lot of bigger intersections. We're looking at, should we allow you to find the gap? And should we allow you to have that pressure of someone behind you waiting for you to find the gap? Or should we make it you either have a green arrow or red arrow? In order to do this, you need to have a 4-section signal head like you see on the bottom right there. So we've had a lot of intersections where we already had that technology in place, and we can just kind of change it to a protected left turn, which is just red arrow or green arrow without any infrastructure upgrades. So we did about 10 of the most severe crash locations. A lot of them were 3 lanes or more of traffic at high speeds. So we changed about 10 of those to protected left turns this summer. So some issues that could arise from this change is if there's more people kind of backing up in that left turn lane, it can back up into the through lane, into the traffic. So that could lead to a high speed rear end collision in some cases. So we got to make sure that doesn't happen. Our signals crews did a great job at making sure that everything ran smoothly and changing all the signal timing to make sure that those left turns could clear out before there was a dangerous situation. It also is going to increase delay if you can't go when there is a gap because you have a red light now. So that is something we have to consider. We are kind of adding a bit of delay to people's commute. And then, of course, it's more work for our signals crew who are already very busy. So those are the challenges of implementation. And then the benefits, we're eliminating a big source of severe crashes. You're not going to feel that pressure of someone behind you waiting for you to make that turn, and leading to you making a risky decision. And the only cost was staff time. We didn't have to buy new signal heads and make a big infrastructure investment. So that's pretty much as good as it gets in terms of cost. Excuse me. Getting over a cold, so I feel like my throat's getting a little scratchy. Hopefully my voice doesn't go by the end of this. So it's kind of too early for us to do conclusive results for how this went, but I did pull one intersection just to see for the last few months, and we saw about a 3-fold reduction in our crash severity in the last few months. So that's really encouraging. Of course, it's a little too early to celebrate because we need a year or 2 of crash data to really have an accurate picture, but hopefully that continues. Okay, so now I'm going to get into working with the Department of Transportation and their funding sources. So I think this is one of the things that Dennis asked specifically about, and it's really important because the Department of Transportation controls most of the large roads in our state. That's true in Raleigh and Durham. in Raleigh in particular, the vast majority of fatalities happened on DOT roads. So we gotta be able to work on those roads to make these safety improvements to get to zero. Also, of course, they have access to a lot more funding than we do to actually make these safety improvements. So for us, of course, our city budget is very small compared to the money that the DOT has statewide. So we go after a lot of funding through their programs, and that's why a great partnership with them is really essential. So there's a couple different funding sources we'll talk about. Spot safety and vulnerable user funding are the two that we're primarily using to get improvements built. And there's also some other sources. Spot mobility is one where you can use that if there's somewhere that has delays for traffic that a project could fix. And then there's some other sources that we encourage you to talk to DOT about, but these are the main ones. So the workflow on these spot safety and vulnerable user projects goes kind of like this. So you, the city, will identify the project location. You give the DOT a scope of work for what improvements you want and a cost estimate, and then you submit it to them. And what they do is they select which projects they're going to fund and construct. It's a statewide selection process. And then they go ahead and do the design. They fund and manage the construction as well. So it's really essentially, you got to put together a good ask. You just got to ask for this project, and DOT does the rest. They select it and design and build it. And of course, the key to this is you got to work closely with them to see what kind of projects are going to be successful. Make sure you check in with them a lot to see, hey, is this a reasonable project? Is this a good location? And we'll talk a little bit more about how they select projects. So we're gonna go a little bit in depth on these funding sources. So it gets a little technical, but please bear with me because it's very important to get these projects funded. So spot safety, it's called spot safety because it's for intersection level improvements, one location usually. There's a cost limit of $400,000 per project. And you can use it for any type of crash. It can be pedestrian crashes, bicyclists, or cars. And they're evaluated competitively using a benefit over cost ratio. We'll talk a little bit about more benefit and costs in a second. So to be successful in your application, you want to choose locations that have pretty bad crash problems. That's where the benefit comes from, the reduction in the crashes that your project is going to cause. So yeah, like the benefit is the crashes that you're going to prevent with your project. Say that you have a crosswalk where 5 people got hit by a car in a year and you install a pedestrian signal. They're going to use a formula to figure out how many of those collisions do they think that your signal is going to improve and is going to prevent. And that's going to be the benefit and the benefit to costs. Injury and fatal crashes are given more weight. So if the crashes that are happening at this location are severe or fatal, then preventing those is going to be a lot more appealing to the DOT compared to if they're minor crashes that only cause property damage. Cost is dollars. It's pretty literal. It's capped at $400,000 per project, and lower the cost, the higher the chance of selection. You can also offset some of the costs by providing a local match. So that could be either in dollars, which can be tricky for municipalities. So you could also do something like contribute by doing the design in-house or hiring a consultant to do that to lower the costs. That'll make your projects a little more competitive, but it's not required. So I'm going to go through two examples of spot safety projects that we applied for and talk about the benefits and costs. This is Howard Road at Ray Road. So we applied for funding for a traffic signal here to prevent some of these crashes from happening. On the right is a crash diagram, or part of a crash diagram. I'm not going to get too in depth on it, but each one of the arrows that are bumping into each other represents a crash, and each circle with a white interior is an injury crash. So we applied for this project, I believe, in 2021, and unfortunately, so far it hasn't been funded. It was the cost was about $150,000, and the benefits are going to be whatever crashes that we can prevent through a signal here. So that would prevent quite a few of these crashes. You can see that not many of them have that little circle for the injury. So we're realizing that a lot of these crashes aren't as severe as at other locations. So that may have kind of lowered the benefit in DOT's calculation. So we're going to keep trying to get this one built through spot safety. You can keep competing each quarter for those funds. And we're also going to look at spot mobility funds to see if we can get this project done another way. Another example of a project that we have done through spot safety is intersection of Prospect and Saunders Street. So again, there's a crash diagram here to the right. You see these the ones coming together like this. These are angle crashes from people on Prospect Avenue going all the way across Saunders Street and being hit by oncoming traffic. Saunders Street is a 6-lane road, so there's quite a bit of distance to go there if you're going straight across. And it was obviously pretty risky because of the number of crashes that happened. And then on the right, you see all these crashes that are the left turn, same roadway crashes like the ones we were talking about earlier. People are turning across traffic, across 3 lanes, trying to find that gap, and unfortunately getting in collisions. So we applied for funding for a new traffic signal. It was funded in 2021, and the project is now complete. It wrapped up in, I think it was late 2023, just a couple months ago, at a cost of $225,000. So that's one that that did get funded. And of course, the benefit being it's going to reduce all of these angle crashes. Those shouldn't happen anymore because there'll be a green light. It's going to stop all that traffic on Saunders Street and going to allow the traffic to go through. And the left turn, same roadway crashes, there's going to be protected left turns in place. So those should all be prevented as well. So that's about it for spot safety projects. I hope that was helpful. Let's move on to vulnerable user projects. These are, this is a funding source that DOT has recently made available, I believe just last year. And therefore pedestrian and cyclist improvements specifically. They're not evaluated, as far as we know, by a formula like benefit over cost. It's kind of a bit more holistic based on things like pedestrian demand, and it also helps to have pedestrian crash data, but it doesn't require it. We don't really know for sure how they pick which projects get funded, but I will say they have been more generous with the funding with vulnerable user projects compared to spot safety. So I think especially if you act quickly, there's going to be quite a bit of this funding available. Hopefully that continues. That was the case last year anyway. So how am I doing on time, Marissa?
I think that we were scheduled till about 8 for this portion. But I think hearing the vulnerable user example would be
Okay.
really helpful. So yeah, go for it.
All right.
If you're game.
Just a few. Thank you. So this is Capitol Boulevard at Calvary Drive. is actually our worst location for pedestrian crashes. Sadly, there's been quite a few fatal crashes here. People were crossing the road far away from the intersection and being struck, and unfortunately it did not end well for a lot of them. So we went after a project here to make some improvements with the vulnerable user funding. We're moving the bus stops closer to the intersection so that people are going to be crossing at the crosswalks and not in the middle of the block where the speeds are higher. We're also installing a fence in the median, once again, to make sure that people are going down to the crosswalk to cross the road rather than in the middle of the blocks where the fatal crashes have been occurring. And then we're also doing a lot of improvements to the signal and to the crosswalks to make the crossing safer. So this project was successfully submitted for vulnerable user funding and funded for $400,000. So we're actually finishing up the design right now. We decided to, as a city, we decided to pay for the design in-house to make sure that DOT knew we were serious about this project and get it funded urgently. And we were successful in that, and hopefully we can start construction very soon. So the vulnerable user funding, it's a very, very good opportunity right now to build pedestrian infrastructure. The crash history at these locations, it helps them compete, but it doesn't seem to be required. We've had stuff funded without crashes, like near schools, for example. And so far, I'm hoping this continues. I can't, obviously I don't make the decisions, but the funding has been less competitive. They've been a little more generous with the funding for vulnerable user projects, and they keep encouraging us to apply more and more. So we're hoping that the cash keeps flowing and we can keep making these improvements, and hopefully Durham can as well. All right, that's all I got.
Thank you so much, Shane.
Absolutely.
Do we have any questions for either Lauren or Shane?
I have a couple of questions. I couldn't find where to raise my hand. Sorry, I just sort of jumped in. All for Shane, by the way. Do you have any results from the case study on Wilmington Street on how that's improved crashes at that crosswalk? You mentioned it for the left turning, but not specifically that spot.
Yeah, it's hard to give a hard answer on that because pedestrian crashes are really rare. So a lot of time can go by between them, but so far we haven't seen any additional crashes at that location. And hopefully it stays that way.
And then my second question was the vulnerable user funding, is that limited? Because it's two questions. Does that also have a cap of 400,000, like the spot safety?
So they've told us to limit it to 500,000 for vulnerable user, but they've also kind of been a little squirrely about that number for some reason. So I would coordinate with your DOT folks that you work with, which I think is John Grant for your city as well, and just make sure you kind of run the projects by them before you submit it. But
Okay.
they've told us $500,000 before.
Okay. And then are both the spot and the vulnerable user funding limited to NCDOT roads, or can we use them on local roads?
I believe it's DOT only unless there's some exceptional circumstance,
Okay.
which you'd have to work with your DOT contacts to coordinate.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Hi, Shane. Thanks for coming.
Hey,
Really
absolutely.
appreciate
I
it. Super
appreciate.
interesting.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, ideal. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say these are interesting and I'm excited. I've got some work ahead of me on Holloway Street that has some dicey contexts with lots of safety concerns in vulnerable communities. And so this is giving us real inspiration as that project gets going.
All right, awesome.
Yeah, I think I just want to say thanks, Shane, and then just, well, first of all, also thanks to Lauren too at the beginning. Great to hear from both of you. I think it's actually really interesting to see sort of get some perspective from both of you and think about how we can kind of work, sort of build on top of each other, right? In terms of in the triangle and nearby sort of jurisdictions, leverage each other's knowledge of how to sort of get things built. I mean, a lot of the stuff you're talking about, Shane, is interesting because it's, I think we, or at least I'll speak for myself, I would categorize it as kind of like it's not ideal. It's not the best thing I could imagine for that intersection, perhaps, right? To add fences to the median and what have you. And we've talked
Yeah.
about this before, but it's pragmatic, right? It's like, what's the cheapest way? And I'm guessing the question I'll guess I'll ask to sort of conclude that is, I'm guessing you're needing to work with NCDOT means you're going to need to make sure that they don't think the changes are going to slow the cars down, right? Like you're dealing with the level of service concerns that they tend to have, I'm guessing, when you're thinking about what you can implement for a vulnerable user project, for example. Is that right?
I wouldn't say that affecting the level of service will kill a project these days. I think attitudes have shifted a lot where, I know that there's typically been a perception that DOT is just like, we're moving the cars, that's it. But I feel like, especially with the folks that we're working with in our division, they're really understanding that safety is taking more of a forefront. So I think that level of service and volume is not the end all be all for the people who are approving this funding. So I think that if there's something you have that affects the level of service, feel free to ask them, and they may be able to work with you.
So great to note. And then I just want to throw in John Grant. Brian Taylor mentions that, yeah, that is the person I guess that we work with in Durham too. Maybe we
Good.
should talk to him and see how we can get the ball rolling and in terms of these vulnerable user projects. I don't know what we're doing in Durham, but it'd be good to sort of include that in our strategy. Thanks, Shane.
Yeah, and we have a monthly meeting with him and a couple other DOT folks where they come to us with things that they've noticed in our city, and then we do the same, and we talk about, we kind of strategize about which projects to go for and which projects to hold off on and that kind of thing. So I think hopefully he'd be willing to do that for Durham as well.
I'll ask Andrew Jones in the chat asks, is narrowing road lanes or widening sidewalks or removing lanes included as a practice for Vision Zero engineers?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Is narrowing road lanes or widening sidewalks or removing lanes included as a practice for Vision Zero engineers?
Oh yeah. Well, so we've seen road diets become a lot more prevalent, right? So we're a lot of times you go down from that 4-lane cross section to 3-lane. I think that has a proven safety benefit if it can work out. And then I think there's also studies on I don't remember the exact number off the top of my head, but there's been some studies showing the wider lane widths aren't always safer. So I think that you could certainly make an argument for those two.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all for the great questions. Lauren, Shane, thank you so much for being here and obviously for all of your time and energy and expertise on this topic. Thank you for making our community safer, your work.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Wonderful. And as Lauren mentioned, we are definitely holding time for bringing Lauren back to another meeting. And Shane, we'd likely invite you back as well. Hear about the success of the projects that Raleigh's doing. So thanks again.
All right.
I was going to say, feel free to stick around, or if you need to get back to your regularly scheduled programming, go for that as well.
Oh yeah, I'm about to call it a night. I'm probably gonna head to bed early and get over this cold. So
Feel better.
have a great rest of your meeting.
Thank you both. Awesome. Okay. So let's see. go for it, Hannah.
I said I will say also, Lauren, we've confirmed with her that she will be the presenter for the April meeting. And that's going to be the first in-person meeting the commission has this year. So April, what is it? April 16th. Mark your calendars. We'll get to meet Lauren in person.
Wonderful. Looking forward to it. Thanks, Lauren. That's excellent.
Looking forward to it.
All right. So with that, we will move into our committee and liaison reports. So, Suzanne, Triple E, did we have an update on the chair?
We do. Very excited. So I'll hold that for last. But yeah, we did meet. We revisited priorities for the group and landed on what folks will want to do for the coming year. And one was conducting at least one community-facing meeting for the year, and then the other was implementing a social media plan, which Andres and Hannah are doing. And moving forward on that, and then just kind of focusing on that and keeping the focus smaller so folks can really dig in and participate. Reviewed the annual report activities and added in activities for those, and hopefully I believe that's finalized at least for Triple E. And then Hannah had mentioned to us that the bicycle helmet application is open, so I believe Suzanne Walensky, who was there, is interested and is going to help take a lead on hopefully applying for that. I'm not sure she's got your email, Hannah, but hopefully we'll get her situated and then she can help with that. And then obviously we reviewed the walk audit letter and have some recommendations around that, but I'll save those for when we get to that. And then lastly, yes, very excited. Suzanne Walensky was maybe pushed into taking on the chair role a little bit, but yeah, she's going to take on the chair role for Triple E, and we'll try to help get her as comfortable as possible. She's going to be interim chair because I think she made the comment that her time ends in June for her first term, but we let her know you can apply for a second term, so maybe she'll get comfortable and take it on for another couple of years. But yeah, so stay tuned. Next time will be the other Suzanne reporting on Triple E. So yeah.
Well, thank you for making that easy. Yes, that's easy to remember, but that's awesome. Thank you so much, Suzanne, for that update. And, behalf of all, thank you so much for all of your work on the committee and commission and beyond. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. Appreciate it.
All right, Scott, Development Review Committee update?
Yes, hi. So the Development Review Committee, as my internet's not stable, hopefully you can hear me. We reviewed 5 development plans and just click through those real quickly. We have one called Sunrock Camden, which was a third rev, and it was a concrete plant where they're combining 2 lots and trying to move the concrete plant part of it to a different part of the lot on 22 acres north of 85 near 885. There's not a whole lot we could get out of that, minimal frontage, and we had asked for bike parking, a bike fixing station, and a Roxborough rail trail is adjacent, and we wanted a connection to that. And all of them came back after the Rev 2 submission, as we will consider it at the site plan phase. So we'll see, but not having high hopes there. But and even if they do agree, there's not really that much near there as far as residential. The next one was 3107, 3111 East Gear Street. And this one is another industrial one where it's 9 acres and they want commercial and vehicle parking and a service shop. And it has actually no road frontage on Gear Street and no transit stops, no residential adjacent to it. But it does have a railroad line going through it that at some point is designated to be the Falls Lake Rail Trail. And so we did ask for an easement to be reserved for that. And so, but that's about the only thing we could get there. The next one was called Danube Lake Townhouses. And this is 5 acres, up to 30 townhouse units. It's in Danube and Carver intersection, northeast of Bragtown neighborhood. And Carver's had some improvements already, with including a roundabout there at Danube. And so we asked for, we had number of things we could ask for, including widening Danube for bike lanes and adding sidewalks. There is a trail that goes through called the Cub Creek Trail, and so we asked them to build that through the property. Although on 5 acres, it's not all that much opportunity there. Carver already has some bike lanes, and so we asked for those to be protected with bollards. And then there's a bus shelter. We asked for transit sheltered bus stop and elevated crosswalks. So this was a first review. We'll see what comes back from that. Next one, Mariah Ridge. Marissa reviewed this. It's 155 acres and 1,000 units, and it is adjacent to I-40 behind New Hope Commons where Walmart is. So a very big tract, and it's mixed use residential with single family homes up to multifamily units. And a lot of it is in Orange County. So we had some discussion about whether we had jurisdiction to make requests on it, given that I can't remember the amount, but most of it, 3/4 or something, was on Orange County. And it also has some environmental issues that Marissa noted, and but otherwise it was pretty blank as far as the details there. So can't remember any other things we specifically asked for, Marissa. I was looking in the comments, and I don't know if you posted anything.
I'm sorry, I haven't had the chance yet, but definitely bike lanes and the potential for some connections to proposed greenways for sure.
Right. There is a greenway that's kind of parallel to 15501 that we definitely want a connection to. And finally, the 5th one was Landon reviewed Oxford Ridge, second revision, which is 58 acres and 300 units. And this one is also north of 85 in East Carver and Old Oxford. This one, they had come back after our first request and agreed to a 10-foot multi-use path and a bike ped connector to Carver and also a transit stop. So we asked for several things that they came back and they agreed to. So that was good news. So those are the 5, and gives you a sense for the kinds of things we're asking for, the kinds of development that are being brought to Durham for review. So that's it. Thank you.
That's great news, Scott. I didn't attend the DevRev meeting this past month, but normally we don't see them always adopt the request. So I'm really happy to hear that. That's a big win, I would say.
I agree. You know, it especially with the multi-use path, and some of them, you know, we get a little bit here and there, but that one was a pretty big win, as you said.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Scott. All right, Pi, Mike?
Yeah, I actually had some family issues going on at this last meeting, and Dennis stepped in and picked up my slack. So thank you, Dennis, for doing that. I know from the summaries we spoke about the bike walk plan a little bit and Pi's potential engagement. Talked about focus of ensuring that existing projects get funded and making sure that the intersection projects are actually getting implemented. And then went over the long-term plan for Pi to work on a street design plan for Durham. I think the plan there was to try to get Bike Durham to engage with us as well on that and try to work together. I think there's already some things in the works with that, and we have a meeting on the calendar, so that's moving forward. Again, did not make it to the meeting, so anybody that was there, if there's anything else that we went over or something that jumps out, feel free to speak up.
I think that covers it from my memory. Yeah.
All right, cool.
Thanks. Updates from liaisons. We know that City Council is meeting tonight and that Carl's not in attendance, so we'll skip that one for this month. Any update from the Durham Board of County Commissioners?
Hi, everybody. No, I don't think I have anything to update you on tonight that's relevant to your great work.
Great. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Nathan, any updates from Duke?
Not a lot. Still no update from the consultants on the updated bike ped plan. the students were all gone for the last month or so. So our Urban Future group hasn't had a lot of updates. They're having a social event this Thursday, but no updates.
Thanks. NC Central, is Royal on the call for an update? Not seeing him.
He is not. He's absent.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Okay. And Jeff for Durham Open Space?
My camera isn't working, so I apologize for that. DOS did not have a December meeting, so nothing to report there, but there has been some interest on some folks in DOS in getting involved in the development review process. Having some DOS folks attend those meetings, since obviously Trails would want to have some input into development review, and they don't have their own development review. So I will try and get them in touch with our development review folks.
Wonderful. Great. Thanks, Jeff. Any other community updates?
I'll just say, happy to have Suzanne taking over for Tripoli. I just wanted to call that out. Nice, and then thanks to Suzanne Schmall for doing so much work, both as those folks who are here will know, as the chair for 2 years while being the Tripoli chair of the commission, while being the chair of the committee. And then I think it's quite eerie that our PI chairs have gone from Mike to Mike, and now our Tripoli chairs have gone from Suzanne to Suzanne. I don't know what we're gonna do about that, but
Clearly what that means is Scott can't leave until we find another Scott.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, my demeanor changed quite a bit in our Triple E meeting from the beginning to the end when we finally convinced Suzanne, yes, you can do it.
You were gleeful.
Yes, I was.
I will say too, if anyone is interested in Tripoli and helping with that commission or committee, sorry, I think Suzanne would be very appreciative, because she was very hesitant to take on this interim role. So please, if anyone is willing to help with anything, just know that that would be appreciated still. So if she was here, I know she would be saying that.
Any other updates? Hannah, you provided a fantastic segue into our next section with that. We now move on to old business. I am just going to provide some update on really February. So first of all, we have the February retreat that's coming up. Thanks so much, Dennis, for setting up the scheduler. Thanks to everybody for indicating their availability. We have settled on February 3rd from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. I think you should have gotten a save the date, but if you haven't seen that, please do save that time. More details will be forthcoming. But the Brian and I and the committee chairs met with Hannah a little bit ago, and we decided the focus would be on planning for the coming year, both for BPAC on the whole, as well as hearing, from committees on priorities, doing some, sort of blue sky brainstorming, and talking more about the speakers for the rest of the year. And also just having time to just visit and meet each other. Obviously, there's been a lot of transition and virtual meetings, and so it will be good to see everyone in person, for some of us to meet everyone in person for the first time. And the plan right now is to split our time between City Hall for the business focus of the agenda, and then we will transition to a downtown event space for lunch and some social time. And I just want to mention too that we had talked previously about having the diversity, equity, and inclusion training as part of the retreat, but the decision was made to go ahead and save enough space for that in a future meeting, hold that separate from the retreat so that we can really get that good time hosting that at one of the in-person meetings that we have on the books. And that, of course, depends on staff availability. So there'll be more details coming out on that, but it will be at one of our in-person meetings. So I think in advance of the retreat, we'd like to sort of challenge everyone to definitely review the list that's in the agenda of the possible presentation topics for upcoming meetings. You know, sort of think about what you would maybe deprioritize on that list, what you really want to see in the coming year, as well as bring in your suggestions on speakers and topics you would like to see moving forward. We want to try to plan as many of those sessions in advance. There's such a, you know, as we saw tonight, such an engaging and educational portion of our meetings. So we really want to make the most of those sessions and get them planned. I think the other big thing, sort of what Hannah was saying, if you haven't had the opportunity to join a committee yet, please think about, you know, where you would like to sort of, you know, give your time and talent. And if you have any questions, you know, certainly you can reach out to the committee chairs in advance, or Brian or myself. We're happy to assist, but know that you can come to the retreat with any and all questions on what committee might be the best fit. And you know, I think it was said to me recently that the committee meetings really are the backbone of the work that we do. It's where the work is done, much of it. So definitely we want to encourage everyone to get involved on a committee as it makes sense. So more details coming out on the retreat shortly. Stay tuned on that. And if you have any questions in the interim or you want to help plan, I think reach out to Brian and me, and we can help out on that front.
Oh,
So go for it, Hannah.
one thing before we move on. So one piece that we still do need to figure out too is where we're going to be doing the food from, like boxed lunches. And so if anyone has recommendations or you know, major dietary restrictions or something, definitely send us an email and let us know, because we need to figure the location of where we're going to do pickups, and then also figure out kind of the ordering and who wants what food and whatever in the next week. So if anyone wants to help take the lead on that, that would be really appreciated. Adil, you said call you. Okay. And also, yeah, as long as it's within the budget and everything too.
Awesome. We did talk a little bit about that at our planning meeting. So we have some ideas on that front as well, but absolutely, we were hoping to send out an invitation confirming dietary restrictions and, you know, probably doing sort of like a box lunch and asking for an RSVP. So definitely on our minds. That will be forthcoming in the invitation, but thank you for that reminder. That is excellent. Cool.
Still plans to have, oh, sorry, still plans to have coffee and snacks the morning of too?
I think so. Yeah.
If you want to help coordinate that.
I got the juice, Hannah. Just call me tomorrow.
Okay.
Thanks, by the way, Marissa, Brian, Hannah, I know, and the committee chairs for pulling this together. I appreciate it.
Looking forward to it. I won't give too many details on the fun event space that Brian has arranged. I want to make sure that it truly is a go, but as Suzanne and Scott will remember, there may be dogs. Stay tuned. Okay, and so then I think we're going to punt talking about the potential speaker topics, you know, focused on that in February. But I just wanted to check in. We had a lot of really great leads regarding future speakers that I know folks were contacting. Was anybody successful in maybe getting interest for a speaker for February's meeting? I struck out. I see a small no from Suzanne.
No, but I didn't do any outreach, but Ryan Eldridge is on the call, so maybe we should just do a warm hi to Ryan and about, you know, anything from the anything that he might, you know, if he has anything that he wants to come to us with, I'm sure we'd be interested in that. So
We have a
Just-
time slot in February. No pressure.
just to say
Great.
hi.
Does anyone else have connections with the list of ideas that they could send some emails and trying to get something set up that's on the commission?
I mentioned
Ryan.
that during the
Mhm.
last, this is Ed, I mentioned in the December meeting that Brian Fahey with the Transportation Department had advised the Paratransit Task Force group that the microtransit program will be ending or transitioning into some other sort of program, but the big changes are coming to the Northern Durham and East Durham microtransit. And I had reached out to Brian following our December meeting about possibly presenting at some point in the future about that. I didn't hear back, but I can follow up and maybe see if there's interest in coming to talk to the group about the microtransit changes that are coming soon. It seemed that some folks were at least interested in hearing about that, and I think it would be a pretty interesting thing to hear how that has worked and what has brought them to the conclusion that it needs to end or change. But I'll see what I can find out.
Great. Thank you, Ed. Yeah, just keep us posted.
Okay.
Marissa, oops, no. This is Heidi. I wanted to just say that, hold on one second, I'm trying to hear myself. I wanted to say that I should have given this during the update and I just realized it, that Durham Public Schools, not really Durham County, but sort of, Durham Public Schools is receiving 38 electric buses as part of Biden's infrastructure and clean energy investment in our country. And Durham Public Schools is receiving 38, and that's more than any other district in the state. So I'm really excited about that and thought that was relevant to your work, and I would share that.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I did see that news. That 38, more than anyone. Yeah, congratulations to DPS. Wow, that is wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. All right, so we'll circle back on the leads for February speaker. You know, we also do have the retreat in February, so I think we'll maybe play it by ear on what happens with speaker in February. I think it'll be great if we can get someone lined up, of course, and if not, you know, we do also have the retreat in February, so maybe a chance for sort of refocusing. Okay. So if there's nothing else on old business, we can move into the new business section of our agenda, where we have 2 items that do require action from the commission. But before we jump into that, I'd like to remind the commission that the BPAC bylaws require that members of the commission state any potential conflict of interest with items on the agenda. And so I thought at this time I'd ask, do any voting members have any conflicts of interest on our new business items to note? I think we did have one.
I will see. Yeah,
I think
Jeffrey.
he might not be on the call anymore.
No, I'm here. Sorry, I was fumbling for the turning off the mute button.
Oh,
Yes,
no
I'm going to have
worries.
to recuse myself from discussion of the anything involving North Roxborough Street, since I own property within 500 feet of North Roxborough, and that would be a conflict of interest according to Durham County ethics regulations.
Okay. So thank you, Jeff. So hoping that the minutes can reflect that Jeff is recusing himself from agenda item 8, new business North Roxborough. Great. Okay. With that, I will turn it over to Dennis. Is that okay for lead discussion on the letter?
Yep.
Thank you.
Sounds good. I will share my screen. So, yeah, we sent out a kind of earlier draft of this letter last week, and with most of the content hasn't changed since then, but we've made some changes thanks to those who were able to read through it and give thoughts, comments, or make edits themselves. I think I said this in the email, but for those who aren't on the commission, currently, I think I sort of decided that maybe a letter would make more sense for this at the moment, because I don't see an immediate opportunity or sort of the logistics of setting up a presentation. Just trying to not be blocked by that. But I wanted to get down a lot of the thoughts and process that we went through over the last year on BPAC. And you can't always get that down in a presentation without it just becoming walls of text. So unfortunately, now it's a big wall of text. It's just a document. Did include a few photos. I'll scroll through this in a second. I won't read the whole letter. It's quite long. It's like 12 pages. But I will, I think, read the first page. I think that should cover the sort of core recommendations and the timelines, and give folks a chance to kind of digest that. And then I'll go over just the sections so folks can just see what's in there. Hopefully you've all had a chance to read it, but for the record, I'll read this now, and then we can discuss possibly putting it to a vote. So this letter is for recommendations for North Roxborough Street, north of I-85. Over the last year, the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission has run an analysis of the North Roxborough Street corridor through a walk audit in February of 2023, a community visit in April of 2023, and community outreach from November to December of 2023. Through those efforts, we have come to the conclusion that the portion of North Roxborough Street in the Bragtown neighborhood between I-85 and Old Oxford Road needs the following improvements to provide better safety and comfort for all users of this corridor. The improvements BPAC is recommending over the coming 2 years are the following. Implement leading pedestrian intervals at East Lavender Avenue and Bon Air Avenue. Add reflective tape or flashing LEDs on all speed limit signs on and approaching the corridor. Add radar your speed flashers to all speed limit signs. Enforce illegal parking along the sidewalks that prevent pedestrian traffic. Yeah, some grammar tweaks. Pave the path between Belvin Avenue and Firth Road to provide north-south connectivity for pedestrians and cyclists attempting to reach the Food Lion. Pave the path between Maynard Avenue and Glenbrook Drive to provide east-west connectivity between the neighborhoods for pedestrians and cyclists. Add bump out signs for no right turn on red on all intersections along the corridor. Increase sidewalk buffer where currently possible using existing curbs. Remove parking from curbed areas and replace with public benches or outdoor seating for businesses. The improvements BPAC is recommending over the coming 5 years are the following. 1, implement a 4 to 3 lane road diet that includes curb protected bicycle lanes, sidewalk buffers for pedestrians, and street trees. 2, build signalized pedestrian crossings or roundabouts at all intersections along this corridor. In October 2023, the Durham City Council and County Board of Commissioners formally adopted Durham's long-term comprehensive plan. The recommendations set forth in this letter are consistent with many of the specific adopted policy statements, action items, and community goals and objectives set forth in the transportation section of the comprehensive plan. Transportation Policy 67 emphasizes the prioritization of transportation investments in communities not prioritized in the past, such as Bragtown. BPAC strongly encourages a review of the long-term comprehensive plan transportation policies for support and context as the information and recommendations outlined in this letter are considered. This corridor has significant potential for pedestrian activity and economic vibrancy. After conducting our walk audit and hearing from the community directly, we believe these changes will enable an enormous shift in the quality of life for pedestrians, cyclists, transit users, and drivers in Durham. So that concludes the first page, and I'll scroll through the rest. First, there's a section of why we chose North Roxborough Street, starting with a subsection on Bragtown, highlighting a little bit of the history of Bragtown. I thought this photo was quite poignant, sort of to include about, this is a photo from 1951 of the Christmas parade on North Roxborough Street at Bon Air Avenue. And you can just sort of see that this is a place where people can and did and should again come first. There's a subsection on the public comments we received, both from Bragtown and from Colonial Village. A reference to the nearby parks and trails that that could be symbiotic to the sort of North Roxborough Street corridor. And because it's a bus transit corridor, I think it's another reason that this is specifically as a corridor that could be a focus for pedestrian improvement. Then the next section is what we found. So sort of different, sort of starting with our walk audit as the first subsection. A few photos here from our walk audit. That was in February of 2023. And then a list of observations, positive and negative. And a mention of sort of traffic safety, a sort of relatively brief analysis of sort of the high speeds. It's maybe, there's a lot that can be said about traffic safety here, but we sort of just wanted to mention the data and sort of the observations we had. A definition of a strode that we kind of discussed, I think, in various contexts. And then a kind of summary of our community outreach, which included both a community meeting or a meeting with a lot of community members in one of our EEE meetings, and then a survey followed up from that, and then a summary of the results from that survey. This section's a little longer, and try to summarize the learnings from what we found, right, through our walk audit, through our we actually had 2 community visits. We had one walk audit, and then we had a community visit again later with just Suzanne and I, with a couple of members from the community, including Aspen. But sorry, to summarize the learnings there, and then a list of improvement recommendations, which are essentially the same as what was in that first page that I already read, but kind of broken down a little bit differently here into sort of immediate improvements over the coming 2 years, and then those long-term improvements. Well, before I even get to that, there was a consultant that ran a study of North Roxborough Street, VHB. They gave an analysis and sort of a set of recommendations for specific intersections in February of 2022. And there's a reference to those that as being also improvements that should be implemented in the next 2 years. And a reference to the repaving that's happening south of I-85, right? This is not that corridor, just to be clear for folks who aren't aware. This is the corridor that's not being repaved north of I-85, but of course they're very related, right? The one-way high-speed traffic on North Roxborough Street south of I-85, and the two-way still high-speed traffic north of I-85 both need to be sort of considered holistically, I think. And by the way, I forgot to make the reference to this. I'll note this. And then permanent improvements is the sort of last section, asking for a 4 to 3 lane road diet over the next 5 years. And that include curb protected bicycle lanes, sidewalk buffer, and street trees. And then a sort of visualization of a possible cross section of what that sort of 3 lane version of North Roxborough Street could look like. And then adding signalized pedestrian crossings at all the intersections along that corridor. Yeah, okay. I think that covers it. And then there's a list of, the last page, I included a list of quotes from, these are most of the quotes. I tried not to be biased. I think this covers pretty much all the sort of topic areas that people are talking about here in the survey. But they're quite interesting quotes, and I encourage you all to read through them if you don't read anything else. It's just interesting to see how much people care and how sort of moved they are by this specific problem and by this specific corridor. So thanks everyone for your attention, but I'll open it now to thoughts, questions, concerns.
Thanks so much, Dennis. I think this is an amazing, I think, wrapping up in a nice summary of all the work that's gone into this, and just everything you've done to pull all this together. I think you've done a nice job for us to have at least the historical context here and all the details, and maybe there's a way to for others to help us think about the next steps in terms of how do we succinctly present this to somebody, whether that's in a letter or a Triple E had an idea of maybe, I don't know if any of us have video skills, but maybe doing a brief 2 to 3 minute video to show some of the issues in here and having that way be a way, but or a 1-pager of some sort, that some infographic type thing that pulls it all together. But you've done a really nice job of putting a lot of information in here and giving us the feel for what's taken place. So no additional comments on this, just thank you.
Thanks, Suzanne. Yeah, I think that hopefully at least, yeah, at the very least, we've documented a lot of what has gone on for future reference as folks transition off and wonder whatever happened. You know, I think as a practice on BPAC, it's just good. And Hannah, I know has mentioned this as well, just documenting and making sure that we're setting up future versions of this commission to be able to kind of build off of work we've done in the past. And I'll mention to that point, Suzanne, maybe even like Andres, you know, you could just feel free to take like one section at a time and start sort of pushing that out on social media. You know, if we have content, we can sort of do it on, as you said, a one page or sort of piece by piece. There's a lot of different stuff in here that can be focused on at different times. So it doesn't have to be, you know, all consumed at once.
I can see an infographic just with this page alone, Dennis. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. If there's not, yeah, I guess continue. I mean, it's a lot in here, but I'm wary of like folks having all the information they can before they go to a vote. But if there are no big concerns, I would encourage us to consider a motion for a vote, and I won't be the one to do that just for the sake of. I wrote most of it, so I won't put it to a motion myself.
What is the motion though? I mean,
I think it's to adopt it as a letter is my thought. And now I guess you're right. Now that's a fair point, actually. I mean, who would this be sent to? My thought that this would be sent to City Council and to NCDOT. But that's, to me, this could just live as a letter of documentation at the very least. But I'm open to thoughts there.
I guess I'm just curious, and I know our city person's not here, but if we're going to share it with county commissioners and the city council, I'm just wondering if maybe they can give us some guidance on would something of this length even be looked at? Is there a way for us to share this? Should we figure out a way to make this more succinct? Like, what are some recommendations from them about what's a good next step with this?
Yeah, that's a good point. And it's possible that we could think of the first page as a letter and the whole document as, you know, as an whatever, so, you know, some sort of reference. But I agree that sending it wholesale is probably not going to do much other than just be again sort of documentation in history.
I mean, so this is Scott. I mean, in the past, I think it needs to be put into a format of a letter with who we're sending it to, and then only use the first page or the first section and put the rest as appendices, just to make it more consumable. You know, these elected officials or Department of Transportation people, they might not have the time to read 12 pages to get to the bottom of it. And also I think what we need is a call to action. So please respond to us with such and such, you know, we look forward to hearing back from you or something, as opposed to right now, if we just throw it over the wall, there's nothing that says they ever need to get back to us on it. Maybe they will, but I just think it needs to be more demanding when we send it to somebody about, please read this and please get back to us.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that part of this is, in my mind, also actually a lot about what Andres is kind of working on, right? Like outreach. Like, to me, it's maybe not even so important that city council or county commissioners or NCDOT reads the whole letter, but that we use this as kind of something that community members can point to repeatedly, right? And so we want folks to have access to this, and potentially, whether it's through an email campaign or social media or what have you. That's another way, I think, to kind of get action out of this otherwise kind of information letter.
So definitely heard sort of taking the, you know, executive summary, so to speak, which is the first page, and maybe putting some material on the front and the end to turn it into that letter. And also heard the suggestion of holding off until we have some direct advice on best way. Are folks, it's great discussion. Are folks willing to make a motion this evening on the next step? Do you want to wait until February? How do members want to proceed here?
So I have a thought real fast. What
Yeah.
if, I mean, on BPAC's website, we publish, different adopted letters and so forth. What if this was just like something that was an adopted, not even necessarily like letter, but like document, and it can go on the website today as is, and then we can kind of figure out what's next. Because who knows, maybe somebody gets hit or injured on North Roxborough. At least it shows like we've done this research and, these are the stands that like BPAC has, but until the next thing comes, that can at least be something that the public can see. This is a really good document. Dennis, you've done an incredible job on it, definitely hands down. So I think it would be really a shame to just kind of put it in the back burner and not really do much on it for a while. That's just my 2 cents though, but
Sort of adopt
Can I
this
make a
as
motion
the
to add
result.
10 minutes to the meeting? Because I think based on where this conversation's going, we're likely going to run over.
Any second for that motion?
I'll second.
Everyone in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I agree with Hannah that it would be good to put this on the website, and then we can work on making it into a formal letter to then send with a call to action. But in the meantime, like we have this document, we might as well make it available to the public to see and read through while we're drafting a letter.
Adopt all of the content as the sort of deliverable from the project, and then use pieces of it in the ways that make sense across different platforms.
Yeah, I like that too. I think it's a nice way to get all of this out there. I guess one question I have is, should we share it with the neighborhood groups just to get any additional, like this in this format, because they haven't seen it in this format, or have they? And just send it
No,
back out.
they haven't. That's true. Yeah.
Send it out back in that format just to make sure folks are okay with that. Do they have any, you're planning on posting it on the website? Just want to make sure the groups that we talked with or whatever, if there are folks that this impacts, like don't get kind of, hit over the head, surprise or whatever, if I've seen it on the website and feel like that does, just as a courtesy saying, thank you for your discussions with us. We want to make sure this represents what you told us.
I think that's really important because as looking forward, the continued engagement of the community groups is going to be part of the force that moves any or all of this to completion at some point in the future. I think they should be involved, informed, engaged, just through every step. I mean, it was great that outreach was done, and a lot of what's in this letter is based on feedback from the people who are going to be most impacted by any changes to the Roxborough stretch there. So, yeah.
I think it's possible also, I mean, in the spirit of the voting process, I guess, like, I don't see a reason why you couldn't adopt a document and then update it, right? If this is a little bit more of a like it's not a single time and place sort of action, right? This is a kind of set of recommendations for a corridor that if the community comes back and says, you missed a lot, I think there's no reason why you couldn't come back and make changes later as well, just for what that's worth. But I might be wrong on that. That's just sort of what I would assume.
And to add to that note, Dennis, approving this language would make it a lot easier for Hannah and I to just go ahead and start producing content about this letter, content from this letter. And it's not like we have to constantly come back to this body and say, hey, is it okay if we say this, that, or the other? Because we've already approved this language. Just food for thought.
I think that's a lot of interest actually with this, yeah.
I think, I think with all the work that's been done on this and the way, Dennis, that you've put it together so crisply, I think it's time to pull the trigger and send the thing. I'd like to, I'm not making a motion yet, but I'd like to make a motion that says we direct the chair to turn this first page into a letter with the rest of it as appendix and send it to the appropriate leaders at the city council, county commission, city transportation department, and NCDOT, and then just trust that the chair of BPAC, and working with Hannah, will be able to do that. I think that's low risk, and it, to me, I just feel like it's ready to go. I hate to, we've been working on this, not me, I haven't done anything on it, but you guys have been working on it for so long, and I think it's ready to go. And I just think it would be a waste to just put it on the website and then sort of soft pedal it from here on out. I just think let's move forward with it.
Yeah.
I mean, if people don't want to do that, then certainly not. If people think that's a good idea, I'm happy to make it into a motion.
I like Scott's idea.
I like the suggestion of getting feedback from the city council or the county commissioners on how best to present this. But on the flip side, the more of that kind of thing we do, the longer it's going to be before we really do anything with it. So I'm not sure that both of those things can't happen, that we move the letter forward and then get feedback from the city council, from Carl Dietz, for example, or Carl Risk rather. And if there's a suggestion that we can take up later on, we can take up a suggestion. But yeah,
this is
tend to
Heidi.
agree.
I feel like that your requests or your recommendations that you've laid out on the first page, that they're ready to be received by the city council and the county commission, especially if you're requesting these, get on the work plan. Maybe they would be funded through the Durham County Transit, fund, and we make amendments to the work plan every year. And maybe this is already part of the transit emphasis corridor, and it would be really appropriate for some of these or all of these recommendations to be part of our official county plan. Or, can go to the city. These things seem more like city responsibilities, but we do have the county transit tax. So I don't know why you'd wait. Just go ahead and send it. It's budget season. The city needs to see your request, and the county too. So that's my recommendation. That's what I think you should do.
That's a really good point, Heidi. Right now is the CIP budget request time. So definitely now would be the time for this to get on the hands of people deciding the funding for next year. So
with that, I will move that we direct the chair BPAC to turn this document into a letter to go to the city.
Scott, we've lost you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There, now we can hear you.
Okay. So I'd like to, we got too many microphones here. Let me go in another room. So I'd like to make a motion that we direct the chair to turn this first page into a letter that gets sent to the city and county elected officials, NCDOT, and the city transportation department.
Okay.
And add
Scott, you cut out again when you said and add, I think.
What was that?
Maybe it was me freezing. I heard you say and add, but I didn't hear the rest of your statement there.
Hey,
Did anyone
Google
catch
stuff
that?
you learned?
I think Scott's internet connection is unstable again. We can't hear you, Scott.
Are we allowed to make motions in
still
the
off?
chat?
You may be back, Scott. Yeah.
All right, so I'm not sure why I'm having such a problem. I'm gonna go upstairs. So I'd like to make a motion that we ask the chair to create a letter from the first page to go to city and county elected officials, NCDOT, and the city transportation department, and ask the letter to also have a call to action for a response.
Okay. Do we have a second to that motion? Is that a second from Nathan?
I second, yes.
Any further discussion? Or are we ready to vote?
I want to take one moment, Ed. I think there was a little bounce around the conversation. Do you have any immediate concerns with that motion?
Did you direct that to me, Dennis?
Yes, I did, Ed. Yeah.
No, I don't. I support that motion.
I think if folks wanted, could entertain a friendly amendment to say that also and seek input, have that courtesy, send it early to the community folks who participated. And that could just be the third bullet there, or the first bullet, as the case may be. I don't know if anybody wants to make that motion to amend Scott's motion. We can discuss it.
It seems like we've had a lot of community input, and I wouldn't say no if people really felt that was important, but I just don't want to delay the process here.
I think we should send it to the community, of course, and I think we can kind of leave it to our February meeting to see if the feedback requires a follow-up based off what the community responds. That's my thought. As an amendment, I guess, just include the community in, obviously, in the sort of sending of this letter.
Yeah, I think that's a nice compromise.
Yep, sounds good.
Nathan, still okay seconding that amended motion?
Yeah, sure. If that was an amended motion, then I'll second it.
Sure. All right. Okay. Let's go ahead and vote. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, hearing none. We've adopted the letter. Thank you so much, Dennis. With that, we have review UDO recommendations. Dennis, I don't know what all you had planned for that time slot. Is this possible?
I'll do the 30-second version.
Okay.
Even less. I haven't heard back from the consultants, so I don't recommend a vote on this right now. I have made a document that essentially just rewords our bigger document into a slightly sort of more legible set of recommendations. I'll even just share it just for 10 seconds while I'm talking. But what I'll do is, as I'm moving off the commission, I'll hand this off to Mike to make sure that somebody is sort of kept in the loop with the commission. With the consultant. And then I think they will probably know best when we hear back from them. I don't think we need to rush this. When we hear back from them, we can finalize this and adopt it. That's my recommendation, unless others have another thought. I'll send this in an email as well, just FYI.
Thank you. Any feedback on that plan? Sounds fantastic. Thank you for all that work, Dennis. Wonderful. Okay. Announcements and updates. Hannah, resurfacing project engagement. Can you tell us more?
Yes.
Thank you.
My computer's been kind of glitchy the past like 15 minutes. So hopefully, I'm trying to send this in the chat. So the city of Durham, we are working right now on designs for, there's 11 roadways that are being resurfaced. There's more that are being resurfaced, but 11 we're looking at to really redesign the pavement markings that are going down. And so I'm leading the engagement efforts on that project. We have several engagement opportunities the next month. The first engagement happens actually on the 25th of this month. So I put in the chat the link to the web page. But basically we want to get BPAC and just the community as involved as possible. BPAC already has in the PI meetings, we had, I think, done like a couple rounds of comments on these resurfacings. And so we're in the works right now of trying to get from the greater community just comments. But in the next, I guess, month and a half, 2 months, we're going to have the design plans finalized. And so there's going to be a lot of different meetings and pop-up events that are happening. And so, yeah, just wanted to kind of have you all share the word about those. And if there's anything that you all think that we need to think about with some of these roadways, definitely let me know. And yeah, we've already kind of talked about this before, but just wanted to bring that up where we have a lot of the events already scheduled, and I'm still working to get more events scheduled every day. So I'll keep that web page updated as new information rolls out. And right now the interactive map is live. So if you go on the web page, there's a link in the engagement section and you can start commenting on that for the state-owned roadways.
And that's on that webpage that you put in the chat, right, Hannah? That's
Yes.
excellent. Wonderful. Thank you for that update and your work on that.
Of course, I'm glad to hear also just from the community member earlier that he was happy that we're doing more engagement around this. So yeah, we're trying to streamline this process as much as possible. And there's a lot of work going into the engagement and just all of these pieces. So hopefully the community is able to participate.
Do you see the question, Hannah?
This is only the ones that are under our contract with Stantec. So the only road that isn't under Stantec's contract that we are working on, the city as well, is Main Street. And that is the first meeting actually of the whole bunch. That's on the 25th of this month at EKPO Elementary School. So if you are interested in more information about that, definitely come out to that meeting. And again, I'm going to keep uploading stuff to the website. So if you're not able to attend the meetings, hopefully you can give feedback that way too, with some surveys. And
wonderful. So stay tuned to that web link. Okay, got it. Awesome, thank you. Any other questions for Hannah on that? If not, I will just double check. Are we good for our follow-up and action items in the minutes? Any other items we need to add before we adjourn this evening?
Great job, Marissa. You've done an amazing job.
Oh,
thanks, Dennis, for all your work and you know, this past year and everything you've done as well. It's you set us up really nicely, so thank you. And Marissa, you like did this beautifully, so.
Okay, do me a favor and don't tell that to Brian. Okay, I did a terrible job and he needs to come back.
More than she
Thank
asked.
you. But echoing that, thank you, Dennis, for all of your work, even continuing into this meeting and wrapping up loose ends. Thank you so much.
Of course, no. Thanks, everyone.
Yes.
Yeah.
I forgot to mention, so I submitted today the BPAC annual report. So it has not been adopted or anything from the city council yet, but that has been submitted. And once that's finalized and everything, I'll put it on the website and share it with everyone. But it kind of, looking back at all of the successes from this past year was really, really awesome just to see. And also, it made me so appreciative of you, Dennis, because basically every picture it was you and I, and so it was really great to have you on the commission. You're going to be missed a lot.
Thanks, Hannah, and congrats on your first year. It was a great one to start with. It was an honor to work with you and learn together. And thanks everyone. And look forward to a couple more follow-up emails from me.
Where are you moving to?
Also, I'll be in Boston for a few months, probably for 6 months. That's kind of the main reason. I'll to be determined after that. So I didn't want to be too out of the loop. But Durham's never that far from my sites, so you never know. But definitely, probably in Boston for until the summer.
All right. Unless there's any other appreciation for Dennis and Hannah and everyone.
Just for Marissa. Thanks, Marissa.
No. All right. Well, with that, we will go ahead and adjourn. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for sticking in and hanging out a few minutes later. And we'll see you in February.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.